Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Christina, and in today's video, I just want to chat with you a little bit about things to consider before purchasing curriculum. Now, I was going to just share with you my curriculum picks as I've been promising that I would, but I feel like it's really important to lay some groundwork first about what I believe to be important things to consider when you're planning and choosing and purchasing curriculum. So before I share those things, which I will be sharing next week, I really want to give you some things to think about before seeing something that seems good without maybe taking into consideration if it's good for you, if it's good for your kids, if it's good for your family, for your homeschool. So that's what we're going to chat about in today's video. If you're new here, I'm Christina, and I'm a homeschool mom to 5 kids ages 3, 4, 7, 11, and 15. Okay, so I feel like curriculum in and of itself is a huge part of what we think about as homeschoolers, what we think about if we're just starting out homeschooling, when we are getting ready to plan another homeschool year. And while I do think it's an important tool, I don't think it is the most important thing. And so I want to talk a little bit about curriculum being used in its place and being used as a tool through which we can educate our children and not something that dictates what our life looks like. And so the first thing I would say, whether you have not started homeschooling yet at all, or whether you've been homeschooling for a couple of years or even 10 years, is to really think first about what do you want next school year to look like? Like really, because realistically, for a lot of it, it is within our control. There are a lot of variables in life that are outside of our control, and that varies depending on the season. But there are a lot of things that I've kind of been realizing, like a lot of this really is a choice, and a lot of this really is within my control. And if I want us to be out and about, exploring nature and learning through field trips and all of these things, we can do that, right? Like there are limitations. There is how much capacity we have, how much finances we have in terms of like if we're choosing things that cost money, but really start to cast vision about what do I want my next school year to look like. Maybe write some things down. What do you want it to look like, and what do you not want it to look like? So for example, if you really want your homeschool to be a time that is spent outside in nature as much as possible, then you really don't want to choose a huge curriculum workload for your children. So for example, you might not, if you have 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 children, you may not want to choose a different curriculum for every subject, for every grade level in your home, because you are going to be doing a lot of bouncing around from child to child, trying to help them with multiple different curriculums. And that is going to take up a lot of time. Now, for some people, they don't mind that. Their vision and their priority is academic rigor, and they want their children doing school for a certain amount of time or to a certain amount of difficulty or whatever it may be. So really knowing what your priorities are before you get into choosing curriculum is super important, because what works for you may not work for me based on what my priorities are for my homeschool. What I choose may not work for you based on what your vision is and your priorities are for your homeschool. And there are so many variables to this, right? Like that's why I say whether you haven't homeschooled before or whether you homeschooled for years, really thinking about each year as a fresh start for so many reasons, right? Because we're changing and growing, our children are changing and growing, they are going through different stages and ages, stages of development, interests, learning styles, maybe struggles that we're going through or our children or as a family. So there are so many different things to consider. If you're having a new baby, you probably don't want to give yourself this heavy workload, brand new curriculum that you have to learn and takes a lot of time to plan and prep and implement, right? So really thinking through those decisions ahead of time before getting caught up in the curriculum buying craze. I could not talk about planning and casting vision for your homeschool without talking about seeking the Lord for His vision for our homeschools. So many are the plans that we can come up with, right? However, what if, and I believe He does, God has the perfect plan and the perfect vision for us and for our homeschools. So I would really encourage you to seek the Lord through prayer, maybe even journaling, maybe prayer journaling, maybe just through prayer, and ask the Lord to give you His vision for your homeschool. God, show me what it could and should look like according to your plan for our family, your plan for my children. Lead me and show me and draw me towards the curriculum that you think would best serve my family, and really submit everything to the Lord, including our homeschools, including our purchases, including the curriculum that we buy. It doesn't mean it's foolproof, like we're not going to make the wrong choice or think something was the right choice and then realize that it wasn't, but we can't go wrong in seeking the Lord for vision and decision making. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. So once you kind of have this idea in mind, once you have this vision, right? Then you may say, okay, now that I have this vision, how does that help me choose curriculum, right? Maybe that's not super obvious. Maybe it is. But I'll give you a couple examples. I don't have examples for every vision, for every homeschool, for every family, because we're all so unique. However, if you really are drawn to like wild and free, if you're drawn to Charlotte Mason, lots of literature, if you're drawn to going out on adventures, if you're drawn to learning through play, more whimsical, natural, play-based learning, experience-based learning, you don't want to choose a really rigorous and or dry type of curriculum. So I'm not here to bash or promote any curriculum in this video. You know that I promote the things that I like, and I actually will next week in my curriculum picks video. But for today, I'm just trying to give some examples. And so I am not trying to bash Abeka. I promise you I am not. Like, they have stood the test of time. Countless families, Christian private schools, homeschoolers have used them for generations and have had success and are happy with them, and there's still people using them now. For me, I think it does not fit if you're looking for the style of homeschooling that is wild and free and whimsical and Charlotte Mason inspired and all of that, right? It is a very rigorous and dry curriculum. So I'm going to give you an example. Myself as an example. This is an easy one because this is what I relate to. I am not concerned with my children having like this immense depth of understanding in grammar, for example. Do I want them to use proper grammar? Do I want them to be effective writers and readers and critical thinkers and analysts of things? Absolutely. But I don't want them spending hours and hours a week trying to figure out the past participle. I just don't. If that's a priority to you, like, that's okay. Then you know I want a curriculum that focuses heavily on grammar. Now, I do want grammar infused in what we're using. So I really like that The Good and the Beautiful infuses grammar within all of the other beautiful poetry and story and writing and all of the other skills that they learn in language arts, and they touch on grammar throughout the way. That I like. I'm not saying I don't want to do any grammar. Now, some people may say, and I respect that perspective too, I don't want direct grammar instruction. If you read good books and you practice writing and you have rich conversations, you naturally figure out the proper way to speak and write. I could be persuaded in that direction. However, I chose a curriculum where grammar is included. Now, I also do not use the curriculum every single day because I want to allow time for more flexibility, more interest-based learning, more literature-based learning, and not feel like tied to a curriculum so much. So this brings me to the other thought about if you want to have a minimal amount of resources that you're working through versus if you want to have multiple different things melded together to create this diverse, rich learning experience for your child. Now, do I think there's something lacking? Let me just say this. If you say, I'm going to get the good and the beautiful language arts, the good and the beautiful math, their science and their history and their typing, maybe their handwriting, and that is going to be our curriculum, and we are going to follow it mostly to a T. Do I think that there is something lacking if you choose to do that? I don't. If it's working for your family, I think it's great. Do I think that you can't have whimsy and adventure and all of those things if you do that? No, I do not think that. So in thinking along those same lines, when it comes to choosing curriculum, you want to ask yourself, am I the type of person that wants open and go? Or am I in a season or coming up on a season where I may need little to no prep, open and go curriculum, nothing for me to print, plan, figure out. It is just truly open and go. If that is you, or if you were in that season or approaching that season, you want to definitely keep that in consideration when you're choosing curriculum. So there are many beautiful curriculums out there, but maybe they're only available in a digital format, which means you would either need to print it yourself or have it printed by a printing company. And maybe that's an added layer that you just don't need in your life right now, or you don't want in your life right now. And that's okay. So if you know you're not going to want to print and prep, or you're coming up on a season where you will not have the time to print and prep, then you probably don't want to buy digital products, or you want to limit how many. Like maybe the one main curriculum that you use is a digital product. You either print it once yourself and bind it, or have it printed, so it's not a ton of plan and prep still. It's just that it needs to be printed and bound and then it's ready to go. But you want to think through how much time and how much prep you want to do and you are able to do in a particular season of life. Because here's the thing, you really don't need to do any if it's going to cause you stress, frustration, and overwhelm, because those are the things that we do have some control over as we plan and cast vision for our homeschools. We can completely cut out printing and cutting and planning and all of those things if they cause us undue stress. Now, if we find joy in it, if we find enjoyment, if we see the value, then by all means. This is coming from someone who loves bundles, for example. So if you hate printing, cutting, planning, deciding anything that has to do with curriculum and units, then bundles are probably not for you. Like mega bundles where you get a crazy amount of resources for a small price, which is a great value, but it's not if it causes you stress, right? And so if that's the case, get yourself an open and go curriculum and be done with it. And then if it doesn't work, reassess and maybe try something else. Another thing to think about is if you want to have subjects that span the entire year, or if you like more of a unit study style approach. And I bring this up for a couple of reasons, because the first is if you want a year-long study, then you probably want to choose a curriculum or come up with a plan that carries one topic through the entire year. So for example, maybe you want to study American history for the entire school year. So you're going to get an American history curriculum that is a year-long curriculum. Or you are going to find a handful of unit studies that cover or touch on that topic that span throughout the year. Maybe you're not going to purchase curriculum. You are going to create on your own, because maybe this is what brings you joy in your homeschool. You are going to create a unit or plan of study for this particular topic throughout the school year, whether it be using books, videos, field trips, notebooking, which is another thing that I want to bring up that I'll talk about a little bit later, is the option of not buying curriculum at all. Not for everybody, but it is for some people. So more on that in a few minutes. So if you want one consistent theme or topic in your science or your history or your art even, then you're going to want to think about choosing a curriculum or coming up with a plan that does that. Now, maybe you're like me, and for many of those topics, you don't want to be stuck on digging that deep for an entire year for whatever reason. Then maybe you go more of the unit study approach, which means, guess what? You don't have to have it all decided before the school year starts. Do I think you should have at least a loose plan to start off your first couple of months of school? Absolutely, right? Because it's just going to give you vision. It's going to let you and your kids know what to expect as you embark on a new year. But if you're going to do unit studies all year, you don't have to decide them all. You could have a list that you're going to choose from because, hey, you might decide that, you know what, in November, we're going to study medieval history, and then decide or realize that you're in a season that it just doesn't fit, or you realize that your kids are more interested in something else and it would really give you all life to study something else. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of not having to have everything decided way in advance. And that is a little bit more my style. Now, you will find in next week's video that there are things that are decided for the whole school year. Quite a few things. And then there's another part of me that's like, here's the master list of unit studies that I would like to get to next school year, maybe the first one or two that I think we're going to start with. And then I'm not purchasing them all ahead of time because guess what? I have time throughout the year to purchase them if and when I think we're going to start them soon. So I also want to say that is you don't have to purchase everything right away. You really don't. You could actually purchase just one of your curriculums. Start that because I believe in a slow roll anyway. So not day one of the new school year, we are doing all subjects. Here's all of our new curriculum. Some people do that. That is not my style. I will start with one, maybe two things. Once we get in the rhythm of that for a week or two, I'll add in one more thing until we are kind of at the place that we're going to be as far as our workload goes. Two more things I want to touch on, unless I think of something else that needs to be said. One of them is kind of going back to what I was saying about notebooking / not needing to purchase curriculum at all. Now, there are people that don't purchase curriculum at all, or they only use curriculum for one or two or maybe three subjects, and everything else is just books, documentaries, field trips, projects, all of those things. So you do not have to purchase curriculum for every subject. You do not have to purchase curriculum for the whole year ahead of time. Now, some people, they thrive that way. They're like, I need a year-long plan. I need everything purchased in my home, ready to go because that's what gives me peace. That's great. Maybe you're the type of person like, that's very overwhelming for me. I don't want to make all those decisions ahead of time. I don't know what yet next year is going to bring. You don't have to. So I want to say that too. There's not like some huge pressuring rush to purchase everything right now in April. So I want to say that too. You could just do notebooking. So notebooking has been a huge request over the last few months, both on Instagram and over here on YouTube, for people who are interested in seeing more about how we use notebooking in our homeschool. And so that video is coming in the next couple of weeks, I promise. But it's a great way to capture a lot of different learning in one place. If you're the type of person that's like, I don't want a different book for curriculum, notebook for curriculum, folder, binder, like all of these things for all of my kids, for all of these different subjects, notebooking is really a great way to kind of condense all of that down in a really organic way, but still capture their learning somewhere. And then also you can use notebooking for separate subjects as well. So I'll talk more about that in the notebooking video, but just keep in mind, you can homeschool for free. I have done videos on this in the past. You can do it for very cheap and or free. There are so many resources out there. Just throwing that out there. Lastly, I want to talk about, do you really need to purchase curriculum for next year? This is something that I've asked myself because I have plenty of curriculum that we have not finished. And so I'm not going to just not finish it and buy new curriculum just because it's a new school year. So a lot of this like new school year, new curriculum, new grade level and all of that comes from our school mindset, which we don't have to follow when we homeschool for the most part. So if we are in the middle of a math course or we are 3/4 of the way through the math course, why would I not finish it and then start the next grade level just because we're at the next grade level? We don't need to do that. We can just finish our math book whenever we finish our math book, and then start the new one whenever it's time to start the new one. That is what I plan to do, and I'll explain that more in next week's video. Same thing for like maybe you purchased curriculum and books for this school year, hi, I'm talking to me, that you did not get to, and you still want to do them. Now maybe you got something and you tried it and you're like, this didn't work, we didn't like this. I'm not talking about that. Or we're no longer even remotely interested in this style of learning or this topic. I'm not talking about those curriculums. It's okay to decide we're not going to use this, take the loss and move on, right? Like it's not worth forcing something that you're not into and isn't necessary. I'm talking about those things that you're like still interested in, that still think it has value. How many of those things do you have that you could actually just maybe lay out physically before you and say, which of this can I actually implement next school year and just completely eliminate choosing and purchasing new curriculum in that area for? I'm doing that. So I don't want to waste perfectly good curriculum that I already have that I just didn't happen to get through this school year when I can use it next school year. So there is a beautiful balance, I think, between that fresh start and excitement about like choosing something new and getting something new, and the freedom to decide and change our minds, and also realizing I don't have to get fully swept up in that because I have these beautiful resources that I still haven't used. So I am going to be trying to find the balance, as you'll find next week, between continuing on with some curriculums that we're already doing that we are not going to finish by the end of the school year, using resources that we just didn't get to that we already have, and then choosing some new things to get us excited and kind of fill in the gaps that aren't covered with those other areas that I've mentioned. So, to recap, think about what you want your homeschool to look like next year. Pray about what you want your homeschool to look like next year, what vision the Lord has for your homeschool. Now, we can't guarantee what next seasons are going to look like, right? But some things we do know are going to happen. Sometimes we know if we're going to move. Sometimes we know, especially if we're already pregnant, if we're going to have a baby, or if we want to have a baby next year, or if we are going to be going through a job change. Our husband is going through a job change, or we're going through a job change. Like many of us work from home or work part-time outside of the home, or even full-time outside of the home. And maybe there's going to be some changes taking place. So really thinking about how those things are going to affect what's going on in our homeschool and how we can plan to make it as least stressful as possible. Then thinking about our capacity for and interest in and personality in regard to planning and prepping. How much planning and prepping do you really want to be doing next year? And then make decisions based on that. Then, what things do you already have? What things do you want to change? That's something I didn't really touch on. What didn't work this year that you don't want to repeat next year because you can actually change it and try something else? Think about that too. I'm just going to add that one in there at the last minute. If something didn't work this year, if it caused a lot of undue stress or conflict or way too much time than you feel like that subject should take, maybe consider trying something new next year. I hope you found this video helpful or encouraging. Let me know down in the comments below if you do already any of the things I shared, or if you just really needed to hear one of the things I shared, like, yeah, I needed to hear that. Let me know. If you liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up. It does help my little channel here on YouTube. If you're not already subscribed, I would love if you would subscribe. Stick around as I share all kinds of things about homeschool, motherhood, curriculum, faith, big family life, all of the things. If you're new here, introduce yourself down in the comments below. I'd love to get to know you guys. If you're not already following me on Instagram, you can follow me over there at rooted_homelife. I hope to see you soon in one of my next videos. Don't miss next week's curriculum picks video. Until next time, stay rooted.